mandibular nerve that arises from it is mixed type of nerve. We have seen that the branches. I'm going to revise once more. The meningeal branch, nerve to the medial pterygoid, sensory branch or buccal nerve, motor branches, auriculotemporal nerve, and the lingual nerve and inferior alveolar nerve. These are the main branches derived from the mandibular nerve. So meningeal branch of the is also called as a nervus spinosus. Meningeal branch enters the skull through the foramen spinosus with the middle meningeal artery and supplies the dura mater and middle cranial fossa. Now, the nerve to the medial pterygoid. It is the nerve that arises on the medial aspect of the pterygoid fossa of the mandible. Nerve to this medial pterygoid arises close to the otic ganglion and supplies the medial pterygoid from its deep surface. This nerve gives a motor route to the otic ganglion, which does not relay and supplies the tensor veli palatini and the tensor tympani muscle. See diagram number 6.17. Now the buccal nerve, the buccal branch is only sensory branch of the anterior division of the mandibular nerve. It passes between the two heads of the lateral pterygoid, runs downwards and forwards and supplies the skin of cheek and mucous membrane related to the buccinator, that is 6.6, figure number 6.6. It also supplies the labial aspect of gums and molar and premolar teeth. Now, the masseteric nerve, the nerve name itself suggests what structure it supplies. It supplies to the muscle masseter. Masseter is supplied by this motor branch. So masseteric nerve emerges at the upper border of the lateral pterygoid, just in front of the temporomandibular joint, passes laterally through the mandibular notch in the company with the masseteric vessels and enters the deep surface of masseter. It also supplies the temporomandibular joint. See figure number 1.24 in your textbook. Deep temporal nerve are two nerves, anterior and posterior. They pass between the skull and the lateral pterygoid and enter the deep surface of the temporalis. Nerve to the lateral pterygoid enters the deep surface of the muscle. Now the auriculotemporal nerve arises by two roots which run backwards and encircle the middle meningeal artery and unite to form a single trunk. See figure number 6.11, figure number 6.16 and figure number 6.17. The nerve continues backwards between the neck of the mandible and spinomandibular ligament above the maxillary artery behind the neck of the mandible. It turns upwards and ascends to the temple behind the superficial temporal vessels. See the diagram. The auricular part of the nerve supplies the skin of the tragus. Then the upper part is to the pinna and external acoustic meatus and tympanic membrane. These structures are supplied by auriculotemporal nerve. We have seen when we studied the external ear. Note that the lower part of this region is supplied by the great auricular nerve and auricular branch of the vagus nerve. The temporal part supplies the skin of the temple. In addition to the auriculotemporal nerve, also supplies the parotid gland, that is secretomotor in function and sensory in function. See figure number 6.17. This branch is shown, and the temporomandibular joint, that is articular branch. Now the lingual nerve. Lingual nerve is one of the two terminal branches of the posterior division of the mandibular nerve, that is given in figure 6.16. It is sensory to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and to the floor of the mouth. However, the fibers of the chorda tympani branch of the facial nerve, which is secretomotor to the mandibular and sublingual salivary glands, and gustatory to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. are also distributed through the lingual nerve. See figure number 6.18 given above. The course. Now the course of that lingual nerve that supplies to the tongue. Lingual nerve begins 1 centimeter below the skull, about 2 centimeter below the skull. It is joined by the chorda tympani nerve in an acute angle. Then it lies in the contact with the mandible medial to third molar teeth. Finally, it lies on the surface of the hyoglossus and genioglossus to reach to the tongue. Relations of the lingual nerve. It begins 1 centimeter below the skull. It runs first between the tensor veli palatini and the lateral pterygoid, and then between the lateral and medial pterygoid. Emerging at the lower border of the lateral pterygoid, the nerve runs downwards and forwards between the ramus of the mandible and medial pterygoid. Note, it lies in direct contact with the mandible, medial to the third molar tooth, between the origins of the superior constrictor and mylohyoid muscles. See figure 1.25. It also leaves the gum and runs over the hyoglossus deep to the mylohyoid. Finally, it lies on the surface of the genioglossus deep to the mylohyoid. Here it winds around the submandibular duct and divides into terminal branches. See figure number 7.4. Inferior alveolar nerve. Inferior alveolar nerve is the largest terminal branch of the posterior division of the mandibular nerve. See figure number 6.16 given above. It runs vertically downwards, lateral to the medial pterygoid and to the spinomandibular ligament. It enters the mandibular foramen and runs in the mandibular canal. It is accompanied by the inferior alveolar artery. See that inferior alveolar artery and inferior alveolar nerve runs together. It is shown in figure number 1.25. Branches. Mylohyoid branch contains all the motor fibers of the posterior division. It arises just before the inferior alveolar nerve enters the mandibular foramen. It pierces the spinomandibular ligament with the mylohyoid artery, runs in the mylohyoid groove and supplies the mylohyoid muscle and the anterior villi of the digastric. See figure number 6.11, it is shown. While running in the mandibular canal, the inferior alveolar nerve gives branches that supply the lower teeth and the gums. The mental nerve emerges at the mental foramen and supplies the skin of the chin and the skin and the mucous membrane of the lower lip. 6.16. Its incisive branch supplies the labial aspect of gum of canine and incisor teeth. So, this is regarding the description of the mandibular nerve. Then the branches of the mandibular nerve, that is muscular branches, sensory branches and other branches. Muscular branches are muscle, temporalis and masseter. A question, 2 marks question may be asked. Name the muscular branches of the, name the muscles supplied by mandibular nerve. So temporalis and masseter, medial pterygoid and lateral pterygoid, tensor veli palatini and tensor tympani. Then the mylohyoid and digastric, only the anterior villi. Now the sensory nerve supply. Meningeal, auriculotemporal nerve, inferior alveolar nerve and mental nerve, lingual nerve and buccal nerve. These are the sensory branches. Now, what are the other branches? It consists of the caries taste fibers, caries secretomotor fibers and articular branches. Articular branches to the temporomandibular joint. Temporomandibular joint. Now, there is one more thing regarding the around the mandibular nerve, that is otic ganglion. Otic ganglion. It is the peripheral parasympathetic ganglion which releases secretomotor fibers of the parotid gland. Topographically, it is intimately related to the mandibular nerve, but functionally it is the part of the glossopharyngeal nerve. See the difference. This otic ganglion is intimately related to the mandibular nerve, but functionally it is related with the glossopharyngeal nerve. Figure number 6.17 above and 6.18 shows this otic ganglion size and situation. It is 2 to 3 millimeters in size and situated in the infratemporal temporal fossa, just below the foramen oval. It lies medial to the mandibular nerve and lateral to the tensor veli palatin. It surrounds the origin of the nerve to the medial pterygoid. Figure number 6.16. Now the connections and the branches of this otic ganglion. The secretomotor or parasympathetic root is formed by the lesser petrosal nerve, and the origin and the course is shown in the flow chart 6.1 in the textbook. The sympathetic root is derived from the plexuses of the middle meningeal artery. It contains the postganglionic fibers arising in the superior cervical ganglion. The fibers pass through the otic ganglion without relay and reach the parotid gland via the auriculotemporal nerve. They are vasomotor in function. Now the sensory roots comes from the auriculotemporal nerve and sensory to the parotid gland. Now the flow chart. Secretomotor fibers, which are responsible for the secretion of the parotid gland. These preganglionic fibers from the inferior salivary nucleus, that is ninth cranial nerve, tympanic branch, tympanic plexuses, lesser petrosal nerve, and otic ganglion is formed, which goes forward postganglionic fibers and join auriculotemporal nerve and to the parotid gland. Other fibers passing through the ganglion are as follows. Nerve to the medial pterygoid gives off medial root to the ganglion, and which passes through it without relay and supplies medially placed tensor velar palatin and laterally placed tensor tympani muscles. The chorda tympani nerve is connected to the otic ganglion and also to the nerve to the pterygoid canal 6.18. These connections provide an alternative pathway of taste from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Now the clinical anatomy. What is the clinical importance? See, this is important in your practice life, especially in the dentistry and the parts in the oral cavity or any injury to that particular nerve, or especially to the nerve supplying to particular muscle. Now this clinical anatomy, motor part of the mandibular nerve is tested clinically by asking the patient to clench his teeth and then feeling for the contracting masseter and temporalis muscles on the two sides. If one of the masseter is paralyzed, the jaw deviates to the paralyzed side on opening of the mouth by action of a normal lateral pterygoid of the opposite side. The activity of the pterygoid muscle is tested by asking the patient to move the chin from side to side. So first of all, ask the patient to open the mouth, close it, and to grinding. Lastly, to test the pterygoid muscles, the grinding movement should be done. That the paralyzed side do not function. Paralyzed side, that temporalis muscles on the side. One of the masseter is paralyzed. The jaw deviates on paralyzed side. Suppose closing of the mouth like this. To it, the side which is paralyzed, to that side the mandible goes, because it do not function. That's why it goes to that side. Then the referred pains, maybe in cases of malignant disorders, the distribution over the auriculotemporal nerve of both lingual and auriculotemporal nerves are the branches of the mandibular nerve. Sometimes lingual nerve is divided to relieve the intractable pain of such of this kind, and it may be done where the nerve lies in contact with the mandible below and behind the last molar teeth, covered only by the mucous membrane. Then the mandibular neuralgia. Trigeminal neuralgia is one of the, see on the face, pain on the face. It is one of the, it is mandibular division of the often difficult to treat. In such cases, the sensory root of a nerve may be divided behind ganglion, and this is now the operation of choice when pain is confined to the distribution of the maxillary and mandibular nerve. During division, the ophthalmic fibers that lie in the supramedial part of the root are spared, and to preserve the corneal reflex, thus avoiding damage to the cornea. So that mandibular neuralgia should be carefully treated. Now the lingual nerve lies in contact with the mandible, medial to the third molar tooth. In extraction of a malplaced wisdom tooth, care must be taken not to injure the lingual nerve. See figure number 1.25. Wisdom teeth infection is very common. So during removal of this wisdom teeth, it may be due to other diseases, not necessary that suppuration is there. When there is a degenerative disorders in the wisdom teeth, that during removal of this wisdom teeth, care must be taken to keep the lingual nerve intact. A lesion at the foramina ovale leads to paresthesia along the mandible, tongue, temporal region, and paralysis of the muscles of the mastication. This also leads to the loss of jaw jerk reflex. Mandibular nerve supplies both afferent and efferent. Efferent jaw jerks reflex as it is mixed nerve. Tapping the chin causes contraction of a pterygoid muscle. In extraction of mandibular teeth, inferior alveolar nerve needs to be anesthetized. The drug is given into the nerve before it enters the mandibular canal. See, it is given in diagram number 6.20. Inferior alveolar nerve is anesthetized. During extraction of the third molar teeth, buccal nerve may get involved by the local anesthesia, causing the temporary numbness of the cheek. So these are some important guidelines or the important about the mandibular nerve. Especially rather than the exam oriented, this is the question that is more related in your practice life. Some of the 2 marks question, the diagrams are already given to you about the 2 marks question. Name the branches of the mandibular nerve. Name the muscular branches of the mandibular nerve. Then give any 2 muscles. This question is reflexively asked. Name any the joint supplied by the mandibular nerve. So this question may be asked by any way mandibular nerve. Now some choice of answer of questions. Lateral pterygoid. What is the action of the lateral pterygoid? The action of the lateral pterygoid is depression and protrusion of the mandible. Which of the following muscle is used for the opening of the mouth? For the opening of the mouth, the lateral pterygoid muscle is used. Which muscle, which ligaments are not the ligaments of the temporomandibular joint. You know the ligaments of stylomandibular, spinomandibular ligament, fibroid capsular ligament. These are the adductor ligament. These are the 4 ligaments of the temporomandibular joint. So in the pterygomandibular ligament is given here, which is not a ligament of the temporomandibular joint. Now, which of the following is not a muscle of the mastication? You know, medial pterygoid, lateral masseter, temporalis, and orbicularis oris. So that orbicularis oris is not the muscle of the mastication. Dislocation of the mandible can be reversed by, we have already learned in the replacement of a dislocation. Keep your thumbs inside the mouth and hold the angle of the mandible with your index finger and depress it, take backward and take upward. So that is a replacement. So the answer of this question is depressing the jaw posteriorly and elevating the chin. Depress posteriorly and elevate. That is a replacement of the dislocated temporomandibular joint. If the temporomandibular joint is dislocated, it dislocates to both the temporomandibular joints get dislocated. Nervus spinosus is a branch of, it is the branch of the that mandibular nerve. Lingual nerve is a branch of, it is the branch of the mandibular nerve. Lingual nerve can be pressed against the bone inside the mouth near the roots of the third lower molar teeth. Then nerve piercing the spinomandibular ligament is nerve to the mylohyoid. So these are the some questions. Then these are some important multiple choice questions. 2 marks question may be asked from this same topic, that is mandibular nerve. The diagrams are already given to you up in the upper part. Now the revision of the sinuses of the brain. The various sinuses are there. So first of all, venous sinuses of the dura mater. Name the venous sinuses of the dura mater. There are paired and unpaired venous sinuses of the dura mater. Paired sinuses are cavernous sinus, superior petrosal sinus, inferior petrosal sinus, transverse sinus, and sigmoid sinus. Spinoparietal sinus, petrosquamous sinus, and middle meningeal sinus are veins. Now the unpaired or singular sinuses are superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, straight sinus, and occipital sinus. Anterior intercavernous sinus, posterior intercavernous sinus, and basilar plexus of veins. These are the unpaired or singular sinuses of the dura mater. Now, some of the important points of the cavernous sinus. Cavernous sinus is a large venous space situated in the middle cranial fossa on either side of the body of the sphenoid bone. Its interior is divided into number of spaces or caverns by the trabeculae. The trabeculae are much less auspicious in the living than in the dead. So that floor of the medial wall of the sinus is formed by the endosteal dura mater. The lateral wall and roof are formed by the meningeal dura mater. Anteriorly, the sinus extends up to the medial end of the superior orbital fissure and posteriorly up to the apex of the petrosal petrous temporal bone. It is about 2 centimeter long and 1 centimeter wide. Structure. The structure cavernous sinus. Structure of the cavernous sinus is related outside the sinus superiorly, optic tract, optic chiasma, olfactory tract, internal carotid artery, and anterior perforated substance. That is given in the diagram number 12.6, 12.7 and 12.8. Inferiorly, foramina, lacerium and the junction of the body and greater wing of the sphenoid bone. Medially, hypophysis cerebri and sphenoidal air sinus. Laterally, temporal lobe and the uncus. Below laterally, mandibular nerve. Anteriorly, superior orbital fissure and the apex of the orbit. Posteriorly, apex of the petrous temporal and the crus cerebri of the midbrain. So these are some of the important relations outside the sinus. Now the structures within the lateral wall of the sinus from above downwards. Oculomotor nerve in the anterior part of the sinus, it divides into the superior and inferior division which leave the sinus by passing through the superior orbital fissure. Trochlear nerve in the anterior part of the sinus, it crosses superficial to the oculomotor nerve and enters the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. Ophthalmic nerve in the anterior part of the sinus, it divides into the lacrimal, frontal and that is nasociliary nerves. See figure number 13.4 and 13.6. Maxillary nerve, it leaves the sinus by passing through the foramen rotundum on its way to the pterygopalatine fossa. Trigeminal ganglion, the ganglion and its dural cavity may protect into the posterior part of the lateral wall of the sinus. Now the structures passing through the medial aspect of the sinus. Internal carotid artery with the venous and sympathetic fluxes around it. Then second is abduction nerve, inferior lateral to the internal carotid artery. The structures in the lateral wall and on the medial aspect of the sinus are separated from blood by the endothelial line. Now the tributaries or incoming channels from the orbit, the superior ophthalmic vein, a branch of the inferior ophthalmic vein, or sometimes the vein itself. Thirdly, the central vein of the retina drain into the superior ophthalmic vein or into the cavernous sinus. It is shown in figure number 12.7. From the brain, superficial middle cerebral vein, inferior cerebral veins from the temporal lobe, 12.8. This tributary is shown. Now from the meninges, spinoparietal sinus, and secondly, frontal trunk of the middle meningeal vein may drain either into the pterygoid fluxus through the foramina ovale or into the spinoparietal or a cavernous sinus. The draining channels and communication. The cavernous sinus drains into the transverse sinus through the superior petrosal sinus. Secondly, into the internal jugular vein through the inferior petrosal sinus and through a flexus around the internal carotid artery. Thirdly, into the pterygoid fluxus of veins through emissary veins passing through the foramina ovale, the foramina lacerum and the emissary sphenoidal foramen. Table number 12.1. All of these foramens are shown. Fourth is into the facial vein through the superior ophthalmic vein. Now the right and the left cavernous sinuses communicate with each other through the anterior and posterior intercavernous sinuses and through the basilar flexus of veins. All these communications are all of these communications are walless and blood can flow through them in either direction. There are no walls in the brain, veins of the brain. So factors helping the expulsion of the blood to the sinus, expansible pulsations of the internal carotid artery, gravity and position of the head. These are the three factors that are responsible. How that venous blood comes from here to there. There are no walls. How that blood comes into the superior vena cava, lastly from the sinuses of the brain. Firstly, the position of the head. Secondly, gravity. And most important is the expansible pulsation of the internal carotid artery. These are the three factors. They are responsible for the venous drainage of the brain back to the back into the superior vena cava. Now some of the clinical anatomy points related to the cavernous sinuses. Cavernous sinuses of the brain. Thrombosis of the cavernous sinus. Thrombosis means formation of a clot by the blood itself, or the that corpuscles of the blood. So the thrombosis of the cavernous sinus may be caused by the sepsis of the in the dangerous area of the face, nasal cavities and the paranasal air sinuses. This gives rise to the following symptoms. Nervous symptoms: severe pain in the eye and forehead in the area of a distribution of the ophthalmic nerve, involvement of the third and fourth, sixth cranial nerves resulting in paralysis of the muscles supplied by it. Venous symptoms: marked edema of eyelids, cornea and root of the nose with exophthalmos due to the congestion of the orbital veins. The communication between the cavernous sinus and the internal carotid artery may be produced by injury, that is, when it happens, eyeball protrudes and pulsates on each heartbeat. It is called as a pulsating exophthalmos. Superior sagittal sinus is another sinus of the brain. Superior sagittal sinus occupies the upper convex attached margin of the pulse cerebri. It begins anteriorly at the crista galli by the union of tiny meningeal veins. Here it communicates with the veins of the frontal sinus and occasionally with the veins of the nose through the foramina caecum. As the sinus runs upwards and backwards, it becomes progressively larger in size. It is triangular in cross section. It ends near the internal occipital protuberance by turning on one side, usually the right, and becomes continuous with the right transverse sinus. See diagram number 12.9, it is shown. It generally communicates with the opposite side. The junction of these sinuses are called as a confluence of the sinuses. So inferior of the sinus shows the openings of the superior cerebral veins, openings of the venous lacunae, usually 3 on each side, and arachnoid villi and granulations projecting into the lacunae as well as into the sinus. Numerous fibrous bands crossing the inferior angle of the sinus. Now the tributaries of the superior sagittal sinus. There are main 4 tributaries of the superior sagittal sinus. First one is the superior cerebral vein, with nerve opens into the venous lacunae. Secondly, parietal emissary veins. Thirdly, venous lacunae, usually 3 on each side, which first receive the diploic and meningeal veins and then open into the sinus. Occasionally, a vein from the nose opens into the sinus when the foramina cecum is patent. These are the 4 tributaries of the superior sagittal sinus. Now, the clinical anatomy of the sagittal sinus, that superior sagittal sinus, the same like that of a cavernous sinus, formation of a clot or thrombus. Thrombosis of a superior sagittal sinus may be caused by the spread of infection from the nose, scalp and diploid. This gives rise to the considerable rise of intracranial tension due to the defective absorption of CSF. Delirium or sometimes convulsions due to the congestion of the superior cerebral veins. Paraplegia of the upper motor neuron type due to the bilateral involvement of the paracentral lobules of cerebrum, where the lower limbs and perineum are represented. These are the some clinical anatomy points regarding the superior sagittal sinus. Now, the inferior sagittal sinus is a small channel lies in the posterior 2/3 of the lower and concave free margin of the falx cerebri at ends by joining the great cerebral vein to form the straight sinus. It is given in diagram number 12.9, the inferior sagittal sinus. Now the straight sinus. The straight sinus lies in the median plane within the junction of falx cerebri and the tentorium cerebri. It is formed anteriorly by the union of the inferior sagittal sinus with the great cerebral vein and ends at the internal occipital protuberance by continuing as the transverse sinus, usually left. In addition to the veins forming it, it also receives a few of the superior cerebellar veins. Now, at the termination of the great cerebral vein into the sinus, these exist a ball wall mechanism formed by the sinusoidal plexus of blood vessels which regulates the secretion of CSF. Now the transverse sinus. See diagram number 12.8. Transverse sinuses are large sinuses. The right sinus usually larger than the left. It is situated in the posterior part of the attached margins of the tentorium cerebri. The right transverse sinus is usually a continuation of the superior sagittal sinus. See diagram number 12.8 in which that transverse sinus is shown and straight sinus is also shown in diagram number 12.9. The right transverse sinus is usually continuation of a superior sagittal sinus and the left is a continuation of the straight sinus. Each sinus extends from the internal occipital protuberance to the posterior inferior angle of the parietal bone at the base of the mastoid process, where it bends downwards and becomes a sigmoid sinus. The tributaries are the superior petrosal sinus, inferior cerebral vein, inferior cerebral veins, inferior cerebellar veins, diploic or a posterior temporal vein, and inferior anastomotic vein. Sigmoid sinus. The sigmoid. The word itself suggests each sinus, right and left, in the direct continuation of the transverse sinus, there is a S-shaped sinus. See figure number 12.9. Hence, the name is given. It is a continuation of the transverse sinus. It is the continuation of the transverse sinus. It is S-shaped. Hence, the name is given. And you know the sigmoid collar like that, which is S-shaped, is a sigmoid. It extends from the posterior inferior angle of the parietal bone to the posterior part of the jugular foramen, where it becomes the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. It grooves the mastoid part of the temporal bone, where it is separated anteriorly from the mastoid antrum and mastoid air cells by only a thin plate of bone. Its tributaries are mastoid and condylar emissary veins, cerebellar veins, and the internal auditory veins. Now the clinical anatomy of this sigmoid sinus, transverse sinus, sagittal, that inferior sagittal sinus, superior sagittal sinus, and straight sinus. Very common is a thrombosis, formation of a thrombus from the corpuscles of the blood only, or the elements of the blood, blood corpuscles only. So, of the sigmoid sinus is always secondary to the infection of the middle ear otitis media, or in the mastoid process called as a mastoiditis. During operative of a mastoid process, one should be careful about the sigmoid sinus so that it should not be exposed. Spread of infection of thrombosis from the sigmoid and transverse sinuses of the superior sagittal sinus may cause impaired CSF drainage, and latter may be therefore lead to the development of the hydrocephalus. It is due to the CSF is produced, but it is not absorbed, and that clinical condition leads to the increase in the size of the head. Such a hydrocephalus associated with the sinus thrombosis following the ear infection is known as oriented otitis media. Oriented hydrocephalus is called as a otitic hydrocephalus. There are also other sinuses: the occipital sinus, spinoparietal sinuses, superior petrosal sinuses, inferior petrosal sinus, basilar fluxus of veins, and the middle meningeal veins. These are other sinuses of the brain. The other sinuses, occipital sinuses, is small and lies in the attached margins of the falx cerebri. Attached margin of the falx cerebelli. It begins near the foramina magnum and ends in the confluence of the sinuses. That is shown in figure number 12.2 and 12.8. The spinoparietal sinus, right and left, lies along the posterior free margin of the laser wing of the sphenoid bone and drain into the anterior part of the cavernous sinus. Each sinus may receive the frontal trunk of the middle meningeal wing. 12.9. Diagram number 12.9. It is given. The superior petrosal sinus. There are multiple superior petrosal sinuses in the anterior part of the attached margin of the tentorial cerebri. Along the upper border of the petrous temporal bone, it drains the cavernous sinus into the transverse sinus. That is given in figure number 12.8. The inferior petrosal sinuses, right and left, lie in the corresponding petro-occipital fissure and drain the cavernous sinus into the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. The basilar fluxus of veins lies over the clivus of the skull. It connects the two inferior petrosal sinuses and communicate with the internal vertebral venous fluxus. The middle meningeal veins form two main trunks, one frontal and or anterior and one parietal or posterior, which accompany the two branches of the middle meningeal artery. The frontal trunk may end either on the pterygoid fluxus through a foramina ovale or in the spinoparietal and cavernous sinus. The parietal trunk usually ends in the pterygoid fluxus through the foramina spinosum. The meningeal veins are nearer to the bone than the arteries and are therefore more liable to injury during the contagion of the bone. The anterior and posterior intracavernous sinuses connect the cavernous sinuses. They pass through the diaphragma sali, one in front and other behind the infundibulum. That is 12.8 diagram number. Emissary veins wall less and communicate intracranial with the extracranial veins. See, the veins which communicate inside the cranium and outside the cranium. They are connection. First of all, connection of a sinus and then connection of the veins. See, superior sagittal sinus connect with the parietal emissary vein, foramina cecum and middle meningeal vein. Transverse sinus communicate with the petrosquamous mastoid vein and hypoglossal vein, posterior condylar vein. Cavernous sinus lastly communicate with the emissary veins about inferior that is inferior carotid artery, internal carotid artery, ophthalmic vein and inferior petrosal vein. Internal carotid artery and external jugular vein. Now the veins, how they connect with the veins inside the cranium, how they connect with the outside. First of all, veins of the skull, nasal veins, the superior sagittal sinus connect. Transverse sinus connect with the sigmoid sinus connect with the external jugular and posterior articular and internal jugular vein and suboccipital vein. Now the cavernous sinus directly externally connect with the pterygoid veins, then in internal jugular vein and facial vein and internal jugular vein. These are the veins or the sinuses which communicate directly exterior of the cranium. How they directly communicate to each other. So these are the various sinuses and the mandibular nerve. Just now we have discussed about the mandibular nerve. Now some of the important 2 marks question. What are the parts of the pituitary gland? It is divided into pars anterior and pars intermedius and pars posterior and pars tubralis. What is the weight of the pituitary gland? The weight of the pituitary gland is 0.6 in female and 0.5 grams in males. That the morphological divisions and anatomical division may be anterior lobe and posterior lobe and middle lobe in physiological, and in the anatomical, what is the blood supply of the pituitary gland? That is they are supplied by the superior hypophyseal artery and inferior hypophyseal artery. In the histology of the pituitary gland, we have already seen the histology. It consists of a very special cells. They are especially the chromophobe type of cells, that is acidophil cells and basophil cells. Acidophil and basophil and chromophobe, these are the main important cells present in the pituitary gland. The functions and dysfunctions that we have already discussed about the that is hypopituitarian and hyperpituitarism, that is dwarfism and gigantism, acromegaly. This we have already discussed in the previous type. Name the various sinuses of the brain. So apart from paired sinuses and unpaired sinuses of the dura mater we have seen. Name the various sinuses of the brain. It consists of the sigmoid sinus, transverse sinus, straight sinus, inferior sagittal sinus. Then the paired and unpaired of the dura mater that we have seen. Paired 5. There are 8 paired sinuses of the dura mater, and unpaired there are 7. Unpaired 7 venous sinuses are there. So various paired and unpaired venous sinuses we have seen. Now after to that, what are the extraocular muscles? Discussion of a 2 marks question from the face. Extraocular muscles, superior oblique, inferior oblique, 4 recti, superior rectus, inferior rectus, lateral rectus, medial rectus, and levator palpebrae superioris. These are the voluntary extraocular muscles. Then the involuntary extraocular muscles, superior tarsal muscle, then the inferior tarsal muscle and orbitalis. These are the involuntary extraocular muscles, 3 and 7 voluntary extraocular muscle. What is the nerve supply of the extraocular muscles? Nerve supply of the extraocular muscles. Superior oblique is supplied by, that is 6th cranial nerve, 4th cranial nerve, and the lateral rectus is supplied by 6th cranial nerve, and remaining all of they are supplied by the 3rd cranial nerve, oculomotor. That is oculomotor. So oculomotor, trochlear and abduction. These are the 3 nerves that supplies to the extraocular muscles. The involuntary muscles, they are involuntary, they are not under control. Then one more question. What is nerve supply of the tongue? See, the tongue anterior to 3rd, anterior. What are the contents of the Welded's ring? Very odd question. Welded's ring of the node contains it consists of a palatine tonsil and lingual tonsil. These are the 2 main structures present in the Welded's lymphatic ring. Name the paranasal sinuses. There are 4 paranasal sinuses. One is the maxillary sinus, then the sphenoidal sinus, then the ethmoidal sinus and frontal sinus. These are the 4 paranasal sinuses which are filled by the air. What are the unpaired cartilages of the larynx? Singular: epiglottis, thyroid cartilage, and cricoid cartilage. And unpaired, arytenoid, paired on each side: arytenoid, corniculate, and cuneiform. These are the paired cartilage. Name the muscles of the larynx. It consists of the cricothyroid, posterior cricoarytenoid, triangular, lateral cricoarytenoid, transverse arytenoid, oblique arytenoid, and aryepiglottic, and thyroarytenoid, and thyroepiglottic, and vocalis. These are the muscles of the larynx. Intrinsic muscles of the larynx is supplied by laryngeal nerve. Except that cricothyroid is supplied by external laryngeal nerve. Otherwise, all of them supplied by recurrent laryngeal nerve. So these are some of the important questions related with the face. What is nerve supply of the parotid gland? Parasympathetic, secretomotor. They are auriculotemporal nerve. Sympathetic nerves via the plexuses around the middle meningeal artery. And sensory nerves, they are supplied by the great auricular nerve C2 and C3. The structures passing through the parotid gland. Structure passing through the parotid gland, or structures inside the parotid gland. So there are number of structures that pass through the parotid gland. What type of joint is a temporomandibular joint? That is synovial condyloid variety of the synovial joint. Condyle is the head of the mandible, and the fossa, mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. In the prevertebral region, muscles of the prevertebral region, the longus colli, longus capitis, rectus capitis, and rectus capitis lateralis. These are the muscles of in the prevertebral muscles. Prevertebral. Then name the scalene muscles. Scalene muscles. There are the scalenus anterior, scalenus medius, and scalenus posterior. These are the three scaleneous muscles. These are the three scaleneous. Name the scaleneous muscles. The scalene muscles are three. In the 2 marks question, then the root value of the phrenic nerve is C5. Atlanto-occipital joint is one of the ellipsoid variety where the atlas articulates with the occipital joint, with the occipital bone. The muscles in the back of the neck are mainly trapezius, then the rhomboides major, rhomboides minor, levator scapulae, and the splenius cervicis and levator splenius capitis. These are the main important muscles. In addition to this, the largest muscle below the latissimus dorsi. These are the muscles on the back of the neck. So some of the questions from the face. Then what is nerve supply of the teeth? Inferior, for the lower jaw, inferior alveolar nerve, and for the upper jaw, superior alveolar nerve. Superior alveolar nerve is the branch of the mandibular nerve, and it is the maxillary nerve, branch of the maxillary nerve, and the inferior alveolar nerve is the branch of the mandibular nerve. And what is the another branch? The lingual branch that supplies to the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, anterior 2/3 of the tongue. Okay, that is all for. You may see the diagrams and refer the diagrams with the topic and think about the 2 marks question. Thank you.